Imagine this, kids as young as 7 walking miles to school alone. Playgrounds more like obstacle courses with towering metal slides and not a soft surface in sight, and the back seats of cars without a single seatbelt. In the 1970s, this was just everyday life for children. Parents back then had a much more hands-off approach, allowing their kids a degree of freedom that might send shivers down the spine of modern-day parents. Little ones spent afternoons alone at home, biked without helmets, and played street sports dodging parked cars, all while possibly nursing a suntan achieved with oil instead of sunscreen. Sounds almost like a scene from a Daredevil childhood adventure book, doesn't it? Walking to school, also very long walks. Walking to school in the 1970s was quite a different experience compared to what it is today. Back then, it wasn't uncommon to see streams of kids, backpacks slung over their shoulders, making their way to school on foot. These journeys were often significant in distance, yet the kids embarked on them with a sense of independence that seems almost unthinkable now. Picture this. A typical morning in a suburban or even rural neighborhood. Groups of children, sometimes as young as 6 or 7, would gather and set off on their trek to school. The walks could be long, often spanning several blocks or even miles. And here's the kicker. They did this without the watchful eyes of parents or guardians. Kinda like when they were home alone. Alone home after school. Also, younger children. In the 1970s, coming home to an empty house after school was standard for many kids, even the younger ones. The final bell rings and children leave the school gates. Instead of heading to after-school programs or being picked up by parents, many of these kids, some as young as 7 or 8, would make their way home alone. Once there, they'd get themselves in with a key that was often strung around their necks, tucked into a backpack, or hidden under a doormat. This practice, now often called latchkey kids, wasn't considered neglectful or unusual. It was just how things were done. In those homes, afternoons unfolded without adult supervision. Kids would fix themselves a snack, maybe a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or some crackers, and then get to work on their homework, watch some TV, or play outside with friends in the neighborhood. And at night, they would crawl into bed and actually sleep with the window open. Sleeping with the window open was a common and quite cherished practice back in the 1970s, a stark contrast to the safety concerns that we've got today. Imagine a warm summer night, a gentle breeze wafting through the open window, carrying with it the sounds of crickets and the distant murmur of neighborhood life. It was a simple pleasure, but one deeply ingrained in the memories of those who grew up during that time. Families often left windows open throughout the night to let in fresh air, which was both comforting and practical, especially in homes without air conditioning. Playground. No soft surface, metal slides, swing stands loose, and gravel. If you ever set foot on a 1970s playground, you'd know they were far from today's cushioned, meticulously designed play areas. Nah, these playgrounds were the epitome of ruggedness and minimal safety features. Imagine towering metal slides that became scorching hot under the summer sun, swing sets with legs that seemed to lift off the ground as you swung higher, and the ubiquitous presence of gravel or hard-packed dirt instead of today's soft, injury-preventing surfaces. These were the stages of many childhood adventures, where scraped knees and elbow grazes were almost badges of honor. The lack of soft surfaces meant that every tumble and fall were a lesson in resilience. Metal equipment, after rusting and creaking, added to the thrill, challenging kids to test their limits. Speaking of testing limits, did you know kids would ride their bicycles without helmets? Bicycles without helmets and pedals with sharp serrations. Cycling in the 70s was quite the experience, markedly different from today's helmeted safety-first approach. Imagine kids racing down the neighborhood streets, wind in their hair, on bikes that were often heavy and a bit unwieldy. Helmets? They were rarely seen or even thought of. It was all about the freedom of the ride, the exhilaration of speed, and the joy of being out with friends. Those bikes also had quirks, notably the pedals with sharp serrations. Designed to provide grip, these pedals could be unforgiving on a rider's shins, often leaving behind a souvenir of scrapes and bruises after an enthusiastic day of pedaling. This lack of safety gear wasn't due to ignorance or carelessness. It was more about the world's attitude towards outdoor activities and risk, like how risky it is to not wear a seatbelt. No seatbelts in the car, even in the back, babies on the ground, and a basket or carry cot. Reflecting on car travel in the 70s, it's almost startling to consider how relaxed the attitudes towards car safety were, especially for kids and infants. Think of a typical family car journey. Kids piled into the back seat, bouncing around with every turn, no seatbelts in sight, sometimes straight laying down in the back window. Now, if the car had them at all, seatbelts were often ignored, viewed more as a nuisance than a necessity. It wasn't unusual to see kids standing on the seats, peering out the windows, or even playing games in the rear of station wagons during long family road trips. And for babies? The scenario was equally surprising by today's standards. Infants often traveled in carry cots or baskets placed on the car floor or the back seat, unsecured. Speaking of being on the road, parents actually used to let their children play on the streets. You believe that? Sports on the street with friends, behind the cars, on the street. Playing sports on the streets with friends was a hallmark of childhood in the 70s. A sense of unbridled freedom and joy. Imagine a group of kids of all ages and abilities gathered in a quiet street or cul-de-sac, their shouts and laughter echoing through the neighborhood. The game could be anything: football, kickball, street hockey with makeshift goals or bases, often marked by whatever was handy. Pair of shoes, a rock, or even the curb. Cars parked along the street doubled as obstacles or strategic hiding spots, adding an extra layer of challenge and excitement to the game. But this fun and excitement weren't without its dangers. The proximity to parked or even occasionally moving vehicles posed a real risk. A misjudged kick or an overenthusiastic chase could easily lead to a ball darting into the road, followed swiftly by a swarm of kids, oblivious to the potential hazards. But at the same time, kids these days just don't understand the joy of car, game on, nor will they ever. Talking about other dangerous activities, do you think sledding down hills in the snow is a hazard? In snow, sledding down the hills, but also tying the sled to the car's tow bar. Winter in the 1970s brought with it a special kind of adventurous play, particularly when it came to sledding. Imagine a crisp, snowy day, with hills alive with the sounds of laughter and the swish of sleds rushing down. Sledding down these hills, it wasn't just a pastime, it was an exhilarating experience, a rite of passage during the cold months. The thrill of speeding down a snowy slope, feeling the cold air sting your face, was something every kid looked forward to. But another, more daring aspect to this winter fun was tying sleds to the back of a car's tow bar. This practice, which would have safety-conscious parents today gasping in horror, was another level of thrill-seeking. Kids would attach their sleds to the back of a car and get towed around, whooping and hollering as they went street surfing. And then there was the buckets of water and the fire hoses down the steep hills so that you could sled on ice. Good times. So, which of these realities from the 1970s has caught your attention? And which one did you engage in the most that you kinda missed today? Make sure you let us know in the comment section below. And while you're at it, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more historic and nostalgic gems. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in our next video.